Yep, thank you, Denny. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for you guys that are still here. As Danny said, my name is James Boswell. I'm at Charter Communications, formerly Time Warner Cable. So I want to quickly talk to you about why Go. Forward, there we go. So this is specifically about, not specifically networking, this is about Golang, the language. What this is not, I'm not here to necessarily bash on Python, although I will a little bit. It's not a tutorial, it's not a comprehensive review, just my experiences and my take on it. And not necessarily a plug for Google, but it's okay if Google, you can email me. So we had a little bit of a problem with my presentations. My presentations actually were written in Go and are interactive. So if you're following along, you want to click on the link, you actually can, there's some little run buttons for just some little code samples and stuff like that. All right, so why did I start Go? I was doing a lot of stuff. You know, I'm a networking guy from a background, doing a lot of, traditional SNMP, trying to do some netconf type stuff. And I was having some challenges with Python. One, I wanted to write more modern Python 3, and a lot of stuff still in Python 2. Python 2.7's been around for a while, and it's looking like it's going to be 3 years of continued support, which is fracturing the community, in my opinion. So it's causing some things to be held back and not move on to Python 3. And that also impacts the modules. So it's harder to get some of the older modules like Twisted, if any of you guys know what that is. It's a networking, low-level networking module. Forever, to move over to Python 3. And then also, my experience as a principal engineer when I was working more younger engineers or, not necessarily experienced programmers and trying to help them get set up and have to build a virtual environment and all these nuances of Python 2 versus Python 3, and it was just a lot of challenges. But one of the biggest things was trying to scale code and scale code in a performant way. If I wanted to go from a couple dozen boxes, to I want to now pull data from thousands of devices. It just wasn't meeting my performance necessaries. And basically, a former colleague reached out and said, hey, we're looking for Go people. So I decided to learn it. All right, so very quickly, if you're not familiar with Go, has anybody ever done Golang in here? All right. How many people are actually using it? Okay, cool. So this is, for those of you not familiar with it, this is the classic hello world. And it's, the reason I'm putting on this on here is a little bit of slide to see what you guys can look like. It's not that different from Python in syntax. So obviously there is some differences. But why Go? One of the big things is Unicode support. If you have to do with anything with Unicode, it's straight out of the box in Go. But one of the biggest things for me was also type safety. This is a really very simplistic version of Python here. But what I wanted to illustrate here is it's very easy in Python, especially for inexperienced people who are trying to get into programming or network automation, to do some very basic mistakes, right? So it's easy to turn an integer variable into a string and vice versa, and Python will just let you do that. And it'll work. It'll let you do that. Golang would not let you do that at all. And yes, like I mentioned earlier, there's a problem with the PDF, so there is an intentional blank slide. But dynamic typing compilation can also result in errors that you may not see for a long, long time. And this is a very contrived example, and I know it's very silly. But my point is if it's somewhere in your code, you have a function call, and you say, okay, clean up some junk in this example. And it's an exception, right? It only ever gets called if one weird little thing happens. But you've never actually fully tested it, you will wind up with weird tracebacks and all kinds of failures. Because unless you ever use that function, you never hit it. Again, Golang, because of the strong static typing, you don't see a lot of that stuff because it is a compiled language, for those who aren't familiar. But one of the biggest items for me was concurrency, as I mentioned. And so I can't run this interactively, but if you were following along, you can press this run button here. And what this code does is it goes out to golang.org, python.org, and perl.org, right? This is a very simple web scraper. And it runs, but it's very serial, right? It goes to one website, then the next website, and then the next. And that's great, right? But what if I wanted to check the performance to thousands of websites? So in Go, it's very, very simple to do by just changing some of the syntax. I think they said there was a laser pointer here. But I can communicate with channels. But you literally, you can communicate and do things concurrently at the same time in Go, and very simply, and without having to do a whole lot of heavy lifting. You don't have to import an ASIC module or try to do multi-processing in Python, which is, depending on how you do it, you might be threading or it's actually forking at a low level in your system and creating whole new processes, which is something I was running into. So one script was actually becoming hundreds of forks, and that can really bog your system down. So just quickly, what are some things you can do with Go? Some of the things I've been looking at lately, there's a project called Go BGP, which is a full-fledged standalone BGP daemon. So you can actually fire it up and speak BGP to a Cisco or Juniper router. But the cool thing about it, because it's also written as a library, you can pull it into your own application if you wanted to write some business logic around it or do some other things with it and source routes or look at your routing tables or whatever you want to do with it. There's a great module that does PCAP. This is basically Wiresharp. Again, if you wanted to capture packets into your system, look at them, write business logic around it, do different things with that, you could do that. And then there's an SNMP module, netconf. And one of the biggest exciting things lately is gRPC. Not a lot of people got there, but some of the stuff that's coming out is streaming telemetry. How many folks have even looked at streaming telemetry? Yeah, some of the guys in here. So I'm hoping in the next couple of years we get the entire community away from SNMP because SNMP's okay, don't get me wrong, but it's a little old and archaic and slow. Streaming telemetry, Golang is a fantastic language for that because you can have your router, your switch push stuff straight off of this platform and then write your own server that ingests that and do what you want with it. Whether you want to put it into a Kafka busk or ZeroMQ, whatever you want to do with your data, it's a great language to do stuff like that in. This is just an example, of an SNMP walk using the Go SNMP library, because I know a lot of us are still doing SNMP. So I just want to give an example of what that code looks like. It's not that different from Python. So that's it. And so Go, if you're not familiar with it, who's using it? Docker, Uber, Cloudflare, a lot of big companies, and of course, Google themselves. They definitely eat their own dog food there. Go was developed at Google. And some of the apps you may or may not heard of, Prometheus, which is a monitoring app. Grafana, which you can actually see out here by the coffee bar. Grafana is a dashboard app that is written in Go, the server behind it. InfluxDB, which is a data store. And of course, I think everybody has probably heard of Docker at some point. That's entirely written in Go. And then one of the great things about Go is it's very easy to cross-compile, and that's why Docker works well on Linux, it works well on Windows, or even Mac, because one language I can compile and distribute a binary, and I don't have to worry about trying to move a Python environment around. And I don't necessarily have to be a C developer or a C++ developer to do that type of stuff. So there's a great community around Golang, and I want to encourage you to check it out. There's a Slack community, Reddit community, and of course the Golang nuts, which is what they call themselves, on the Google groups. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to approach me and ask. And have a great trip home, everybody. Thank you.